All right, guys, welcome to our Part 2 NBA video here today. And real quick, as I said in my prior video, we did finish last season 7-0 in our final 7 college basketball tier package bets on my website. Reason why I throw that out there, college basketball starts here today, so you may want to think about that. But anyway, before we go ahead and move on, just want to take a quick timeout. Welcome you to our NBA Part 2 video here today for Monday, November 7th, 2022. As always, my name is Brock Page, and I do sports picks for free right here on YouTube. I also sell my personal sports bets on patreon.com/BrockPage. Once again, guys, I went 7-0 in my final 7 college basketball tier package bets last season. And just remember, guys, if you sign up for that package here today, you're going to get access to that membership for the next 30 days. And as an added bonus, I'm going to include all my cheaper memberships absolutely free. And I'll include a link for that package in the description section below. And with that, let's go ahead and dive into some free content. For some reason, it was a game that I skipped over in part 1. So let's go ahead and take a look at it. I'm talking about the Blazers taking on the Heat, 8:30 Eastern start time. Miami's the 8-point favorite at home, totals 215. Now, both teams are extremely banged up right now. Miami's got Butler and Hero listed as questionable. Victor Oladipo, he's also still out for the Heat. Meanwhile, for Portland on the other side, Damian Lillard, he's listed as questionable with a calf injury. Having said that, though, I do think it's the defensive play of Portland that's been their strength, thus far. They're in the top 10 in fewest points allowed. And they're amongst the best teams in the West in defensive boards. Yusuf Nurkic, he's leading the charge with 11 rebounds a night, along with 14 points. And speaking of the scoring, Anthony Simons, he's getting 22 a night, and he's shooting 90% from the foul line. Now, they're facing a Miami defense who doesn't guard the three ball all that well. They're actually in the bottom 10 in the league in defensive three-point percentage. So even though defense is their strength, they're certainly struggling in that particular category. Now, offensively, Miami's having a tough time getting on the scoreboard. They're amongst the lowest scoring teams in the East right now. When it comes to the total, the Heat saw their last 3 straight stay under the line. 6-3 to the under in their last 9. Meanwhile, Portland saw all of their games this year stay under the total except for 2. I'm going to lean toward Portland plus 8, under 215. Next ball game, Celtics Grizzlies, 9 o'clock Eastern start time. Boston's minus 3.5, totals 231. And even though the Celtics are scoring a whole lot of points, it's the Grizzlies who've been very tough to beat at home this year. As a matter of fact, they're undefeated in the Forum. They're averaging over 117 points a night offensively. John Morant scoring over 28 points a game, and he's making 47% of his three-pointers. And speaking of three balls, Desmond Bane's making 46% of his shots from long range. They're facing a Boston club who's been pretty lax on defense. They're allowing over 115 points a game, and they're doing a bad job of getting defensive boards. And speaking of rebounds, the Celtics are also amongst the worst teams in the East in offensive rebounding. Now, injury-wise, Al Horford's questionable with a back injury. Meanwhile, for Memphis, Green and Jackson are questionable for them. When it comes to the total, the Grizzlies saw overs against the likes of Charlotte, Brooklyn, and Dallas. Meanwhile, Boston saw 4 out of their last 5 get over the line themselves. I'm going to lean toward Memphis plus 3.5, over 231. Next matchup, it is going to be Knicks at the T-Wolves, 9:15 Eastern start time. Minnesota's the 3-point favorite at home, totals 235. And even though the Timberwolves will be missing Rudy Gobert, they still have a handful of guys who can get rebounds. Karl Anthony Towns, he's averaging nearly 9 boards a game, and he's also scoring 22 points a night. Meanwhile, Anthony Edwards, he's scoring 22 points a game himself. Now, they're facing a Knicks team on the other side who simply gives up just way too many points, and they have a tough time rebounding themselves. These guys are currently in the bottom 10 in defensive boards, and they're giving up 116 points a game. Now, offensively, on the other end of the court, the Knicks have been very little threat shooting from long distance. When it comes to the injury report, Quentin Grimes is questionable for New York. And now total-wise, the Knicks have gone 67% to the over this year. Meanwhile, Minnesota saw overs against the likes of Houston, San Antonio, and Utah. I'm going to lean toward Minnesota -3, over 235. Next ball game, it is going to be Nuggets at the Spurs, 9:30 Eastern tip-off. Denver's the 7-point favorite on the road, totals 234.5. Now, the Nuggets have won 6 out of their last 8, and they're currently the best shooting team in the league on the floor. They're actually making a league-best 50% of their field goals, and they're leading the entire association in three-point percentage. Michael Porter Jr. is drilling over 49% of his three-pointers, and he's scoring 17 points a game. Meanwhile, Nikola Jokic, he's averaging over 20 points a night himself. They're facing one of the worst defensive teams in the league right now in San Antonio. The Spurs are currently dead last in guarding the field goal, and they're giving up over 121 points a game. Now, more recently, the Spurs, they do find themselves in the middle of a 3-game losing streak, so things not looking great for San Antonio right now. When it comes to the injury report, Collins and Langford are questionable for the Spurs. Meanwhile, for Denver, Smith and Nagy are doubtful. When it comes to total, 5 out of Denver's last 8 did get over the total. Meanwhile, San Antonio saw overs recently against the likes of Toronto, Chicago, and Minnesota. I'm going to lean toward Denver -7, over 234.5. Next matchup, it is going to be Nets at the Mavericks, 9:45 East. Dallas is the 6-point favorite at home, totals 216. Now, the Mavs have won 4 out of their last 5. They've been pretty tough to beat at home. When it comes to offensive production, these guys are in the top 3 in shooting from the field. Luka Doncic is averaging a league-best 36 points a game. Meanwhile, Spencer Dinwiddie's making almost 43% of his shots from downtown. They're facing a Nets team who has a tough time defending the three-pointer themselves. They're actually in the bottom 3 in defensive three-point percentage. And in addition to that, they failed to cover in 7 out of their last 8 contests. Now, one more thing to add here, guys, about Brooklyn. These guys just simply can't rebound. They simply don't rebound. They're in the bottom 3 in the league in offensive boards. And they're also amongst the worst defensive rebounding teams in the East. Now, injury-wise, Ben Simmons is questionable with a knee. Meanwhile, for Dallas on the other side, Bertans and Ntilikina, they're listed as out for them. When it comes to the total, Dallas went 6-1 to the over in their last 7. Meanwhile, Brooklyn saw overs against the likes of Indiana, Memphis, and this very Dallas team. I'm going to lean toward the Mavericks -6 and the over 216. Next contest I have for you, it is going to be Kings at the Warriors, 10 o'clock Eastern tip-off. Now, Golden State's the 7.5-point favorite at home, totals 234. But in my opinion here, guys, the Warriors just aren't playing good enough basketball to lay this number here. They're on a 5-game losing streak right now. They failed to cover in 7 out of their last 9. They're also one of the worst defensive teams in the league right now. Golden State's currently giving up more points a game than any other team in the NBA. Now, they're facing a Sacramento squad on the other side of things who's scoring 115 points a night themselves, and they're actually one of the best field goal shooting teams in the game. De'Aaron Fox, he's currently making over 55% of his field goals, and he's leading the team in scoring. Meanwhile, Domantas Sabonis, he is scoring 16 points a game. He's also averaging double-digit rebounds, so being a really good presence underneath the basket. Now, injury-wise, Kings are relatively healthy right now. Meanwhile, for Golden State, Curry, Green, and Wiggins are questionable. Iguodala sitting this one out. When it comes to the total, Golden State's 80% to the over this year. No real surprise there with how bad they've been playing on defense. Meanwhile, Sacramento saw overs against the likes of Orlando, Miami, and this very Golden State team. I'm going to lean towards Sacramento plus 7.5, over 234. Next contest I have for you, it is going to be Lakers taking on the Jazz, 10:15 Eastern start time. Utah's the 5-point favorite at home, totals 229. Now, Utah's scoring over 116 points a game. They're led by Lauri Markkanen, who's scoring 21 points a night. Now, teammate Mike Conley, he's also drilling 40% of his three-pointers. He's averaging a dozen points a game. Now, they're facing a Laker team who really struggles on the offensive end of the court. They're shooting a league-worst 28% from three-land. They're also in the bottom 5 in offensive points per game. Now, injury-wise, Pat Bev is out. Meanwhile, for the Jazz on the other side, Vanderbilt and Bolmaro are questionable. When it comes to the total, Utah's 6-2 to the under in their last 8. Meanwhile, 5 out of the Lakers' last 8 stayed under the total themselves. I'm going to lean toward Utah -5, under 229. And with that, guys, we're going to jump into our next and final matchup for the video. It is going to be Cavs at the Clippers, 10:30 p.m. East. Cleveland's -4.5, totals 213 and a hook. Now, the Cavs have lost only one game this season, and they've played incredibly tough defense. They're in the top 3 in defensive boards, and they're limiting their competition to only 103 points a night. Now, offensively, Donovan Mitchell averages 31 points a game. He's making over 40% of his three-pointers. Meanwhile, Karis LeVert, he's drilling 45% of his shots from three-land. They're facing a Clipper team on the other side who's scoring fewer points a game than any other club in the league. They're also in the bottom 5 in shooting from long distance. Now, when it comes to the injury report, Leonard and Kennard, they're listed as questionable for LA. Meanwhile, for Cleveland on the other side, Dylan Windler's listed as questionable for them. When it comes to the total, Cleveland saw their last 2 straight stay under the number, unders against the likes of the Lakers and Detroit. Meanwhile, the Clippers on the other side, they saw every game this year stay under the line except for one. I'm going to lean toward Cleveland, -4.5, under 213 and a hook. And with that, guys, now it's time for our quick pick recap. I like Portland +8, under 215. Give me Memphis +3.5, over 231. I like Minnesota -3, over 235. Denver -7, over 234.5. And just a quick reminder here, guys, that college basketball starts here today. And I finished the year last season 7-0 in my final 7 college basketball tier package bets on my website. Give me Dallas -6, over 216. Sacramento +7.5, over 234. Utah Jazz -5, under 229. And with my next and final free pick for the video, I'm going to lean toward Cleveland, -4.5, under 213.5.